Hey guys, EC Network here, coming at you with another video. In the entertainment industry, when it comes to movies and TV, reboots and revivals play a pretty big role in the industry. A lot of shows that ended years ago are coming back in the form of either a reboot or a revival series, and more often than not, those reboots and revivals don't do well. We can look to Cartoon Network, for example, with their recent reboots and revivals, such as Teen Titans Go. It's done well from a financial perspective, but when it comes from a fan reception point of view, it's not exactly the most well-received show. Same thing goes for the Ben 10 reboot or the Powerpuff Girls reboot. Those two shows didn't do well financially for the network. The Ben 10 reboot did in the beginning, but later on it teetered off in terms of ratings and in terms of merchandise sales. The Powerpuff Girls reboot was a failure from day one. What makes a series that is rebooted or revived fail, and what makes it succeed? Because we've seen other instances with Cartoon Network and Adult Swim when it comes to something like the Samurai Jack season 5 revival, the final season. That was something that was actually successful for the network. So again, what makes a reboot succeed and what makes them fail? So first and foremost, I think when it comes to reboots and revivals, more so reboots in general, I think one of the things that often happens during development which makes things go astray is you have a different team working on the series. So like, for example, you have, let's say, a show like the original Powerpuff Girls. The original Powerpuff Girls was worked on by Craig McCracken. All of a sudden, Cartoon Network wants to reboot the series and Craig McCracken is not involved. So instantly, there's going to be a different perspective on the series because the original creator, the person who conceptualized these characters, is not involved at all whatsoever. So Craig might have one take on the Powerpuff Girls, and then the people who are working on the reboot may have a completely different take on the Powerpuff Girls. So more often than not, what happens whenever a series is rebooted is that they try to make it a new take on those classic characters. They try to do it in a new perspective. More often than not, that doesn't work out, and the reason why is because people have a certain threshold in their minds for what the Powerpuff Girls should be. People enjoyed the original series. They look upon it with nostalgia, and then all of a sudden this new series is coming out, the art style changes, the tone of the show changes, and all of a sudden it's a completely different series from what the original was. All it is in similarity is it uses the same name of the show, the Powerpuff Girls, and it uses the same characters. Other than that, the show is completely different from a tonal perspective. And I think that's where most reboots go wrong, is they're trying to change what the original did well, because everyone wants to put their own stamp on the franchise. They want to make it their Powerpuff Girls instead of making it the Powerpuff Girls, if that makes sense. They want to turn it into their own series with these classic characters, with different points of views on them and different thoughts on how the story should go and the tone of the series, as opposed to keeping it in line with what the original sought out to do. Then we look at something like the Samurai Jack season 5, the final season that was revived on Adult Swim. That series stayed true to the original's tone. If anything, it got darker and aged up with the audience, which is something that some series do try to do. Some series do come back and they try to get deeper and darker because the audience who originally watched the show is now much older and is into these more deeper and darker plots. The other thing the Samurai Jack revival did well is it kept Genndy Tartakovsky on board. Literally all the Samurai Jack revival was one additional season to conclude the original series. Genndy had his plan on how he wanted the show to end, and whether you like the way the show ended or not, it stayed true to the original series. It stayed true to what the original show sought out to do. It was more plot heavy than the first 4 seasons, yes, because it was trying to conclude and wrap up the series, but that was a successful revival. That was something that went well for Cartoon Network and Adult Swim. Another reason why the Samurai Jack revival went well in the first place is because it made sense to do. In recent videos, you might hear me talking about how I want Cartoon Network to bring back certain shows. Like I want them to bring back, for example, Galactic Kids Next Door, revive Conan Kids Next Door in the form of Galactic Kids Next Door. I want them to bring back Symbiotic Titan, Ben 10, a 5th iteration of the original continuity, maybe even Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy as well, since there's a lot of interest there from Maxwell Adams, and it seems like there's something happening behind the scenes there, given that he recently stated, if you guys haven't seen the video, I'll leave a card to it above, but he recently stated that Cartoon Network's currently sitting on a project that he's come up with, and he doesn't know what's going to happen with it, but given that there's a lot of interest there, I even would like to see that series come back. And the thing is as well, is you can't bring back every single series, you can't revive every show, reboot every show, and I think the area that a lot of these networks go wrong in is when they reboot a series or a franchise, they do it where it doesn't make sense. Like, for example, if we look at a show like Teen Titans, right? It ended on a cliffhanger. A lot of people want to see a 6th season of the original Teen Titans. So that's an instance where it would make sense to do a revival. People want to see it happen. You never got to finish the story of the original series, so it makes sense to go back to that universe and finish that show. On the flip side, what they actually decided to do is reboot the Teen Titans entirely. And what did they do? They took an action-oriented series that was more serious in tone and sometimes had some less serious episodes, but generally speaking, it had a more serious plot line. They took that series and transformed it into a comedy, something that it was never meant to be. And so all of a sudden, you take a series that's held in high regard in Teen Titans, and you bring in Teen Titans Go, which most people don't like. The problem with the network, and not even Cartoon Network in general, it's just in general in the whole media landscape, a lot of times when series are rebooted and revived, it's because of network executives forcing it to happen. Like, for example, did it ever make sense for Ben 10 to get rebooted? In my opinion, the answer is no. After Ben 10 Omniverse ended, there were a lot of rumors going around that the next series was going to be a Ben 10,000 show, and in all honesty, that would make more sense for the franchise as opposed to rebooting it. I remember back in around 2015 or so, there were 2 rumors going on with Ben 10. The first of which was that the series was going to get rebooted, and I was like, that doesn't really make much sense. Why would you reboot Ben 10? It's going pretty well, other than the toy line's not selling as well, which obviously is the reason why they rebooted it in the first place. And then there were the rumors of Ben 10,000, which would make sense from a narrative perspective, but of course, because of network meddling, they decided to reboot the series because, as I said before, they wanted to get toy sales up, and they wanted to bring Ben 10 to a younger audience and dumb it down as opposed to the more serious tone it had in Alien Force and Ultimate Alien, and to an extent Omniverse. So that's the reason, in my opinion, that reboots and revivals often fail, is because network executives kind of force them to happen. A lot of times they do it with series that don't make sense to reboot or revive. And then when they do reboot or revive the series, they ended up changing what the series initially went out to be. That's why it's best if the original creators are still involved, because the show will stay true to the original tone of the series in most cases. Of course, I know with the Ben 10 reboot, Man of Action was actually involved in it, and obviously the Ben 10 reboot is completely different from the original Ben 10, so it's not always a surefire thing, but generally speaking, I feel like the big factors that play into a reboot or a revival failing is, number 1, changing the show's tone from what the original show set out to do, number 2, having a different creative crew work on the series, and number 3, network executives forcing it to happen. Don't make a reboot or a revival where it doesn't make sense to do so, because you're just going to set up the series to fail. Anyways, let me know in the comment section below what you guys think about all this. What do you guys think on reboots and revivals? Would you rather not have any reboots or revivals, or would you enjoy certain series coming back where it makes sense? If you guys enjoyed this video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe to see more content like this from DC Network. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys next time.